She was just the driver's daughter, shy, innocent, and never belonging to the glittering world of the rich. But at a grand gala filled with diamonds and power, a billionaire's eyes found her. When he asked, "Care for a dance?" her life changed forever. This is a story of love that crossed class, wealth, and society's judgment. A story that proves true love only sees the heart. Mia Bella's father had been a driver for millionaire Jackson Jorden for over 15 years. Every morning he wore the same pressed uniform, polished his shoes until they gleamed, and carried himself with the quiet pride of a man who worked honestly. That evening, the mansion lights glowed brighter than usual. The gala was not just any event, it was the kind of night where wealth and elegance gathered under one roof, where diamonds sparkled more than the stars outside. Mia stood near the doorway, watching her father adjust his tie in the mirror. Her heart pounded, and a voice inside her whispered, "Tonight is my chance." Her fingers twisted nervously around the edge of her dress. "Father," she said softly, almost afraid of her own courage, "please, take me with you tonight." The brush paused in his hand. He looked at her through the mirror, his expression heavy with surprise. "Mia," he said firmly, "you know this isn't for us. That ballroom, it belongs to them, not people like us." But Mia's eyes, blue, filled with a desperate kind of hope, did not lower. "I don't want to take anything from them. I just want to see it. Just once. To know what it looks like. To feel for a moment what you see every year when you drive them there." Her father turned fully, sighing deeply. He knew her too well, her quiet dreams, her hidden longings, the way she never asked for anything. He wanted to protect her from the cruelty of that world, from whispers that could cut sharper than knives. "Mia," he tried again, his voice softening, "if I take you inside, people might laugh. They'll notice I can't." "Then ask him," she interrupted gently. Her hands clutched each other in front of her chest. "Please, Father, I'll stay quiet. I'll stand in the back. I just want to see it, not to belong. Please." Her father's chest ached at her words. He had always dreamed of giving her more, a better life, a chance to rise beyond the shadows of his job. And now, standing there, he realized this small wish might mean the world to her. At that moment, heavy footsteps echoed in the marble hall. The air shifted. Jackson Jorden appeared, tall and commanding, his presence filling the space effortlessly. His black suit was perfectly tailored, his cufflinks gleamed, his expression unreadable. The driver straightened instantly, bowing his head with respect. His mouth went dry, but he gathered his courage, something he had never done in all his years of service. "Sir," his voice trembled slightly, "I have a request. My daughter, she has always dreamed of seeing such an event. If you don't mind, could she accompany me inside the gala tonight? I promise she will cause no trouble." Jackson paused, one hand on the button of his jacket. His gaze shifted from the driver to Mia. She had lowered her head shyly, but when her eyes met his, he froze. There was no greed in her expression. No hunger for wealth or power, only pure innocence, a longing that came straight from the heart. For the first time that evening, Jackson's stern expression softened. A faint smile touched his lips, brief but unmistakable. "Let her come," he said simply. The driver blinked, relief flooding his chest. Mia gasped, her heart leaping as though it had sprouted wings. "Thank you, sir," her father whispered, bowing deeply. Jackson gave a small nod and strode ahead, not realizing that with those 3 words, he had set into motion something far greater than he, or Mia, could have ever imagined. And just like that, Mia's dream began, a dream that would soon turn into a story the world would never forget. The moment Mia stepped across the threshold of the ballroom, her breath caught in her throat. It was as though she had left behind the world she knew and entered a place built out of pure fantasy. Golden chandeliers hung high above, each crystal shimmering with firelight, scattering stars across the polished marble floor. Soft music drifted through the air, violins and cellos weaving a melody so graceful it felt like the heartbeat of the evening itself. Everywhere she looked, colors dazzled her eyes. Women glided past in gowns of emerald and ruby, sapphire and silver, fabrics so fine they seemed alive with movement. Their jewelry glistened with the brilliance of treasures she had only ever seen in magazines. Mia pressed her lips together, steadying her racing heart. For one precious moment, she let herself soak in the wonder of it all. So this is what it's like. But the spell didn't last long. As she moved a little farther into the room, she felt it. Eyes on her. Curious glances, raised brows, whispers hidden behind manicured hands. Her dress was simple, lovely in its own way, but plain beside gowns that caught the light like flowing rivers of gold. The fabric she wore carried no jewels, no name of a famous designer. To them, she was just different. Her throat tightened. A few young women laughed quietly as they brushed past her, their perfume heavy in the air. One looked her up and down, then turned to her companion with a smirk. Heat rushed to Mia's cheeks, but she forced herself to remember her father's words, spoken in a tone both protective and proud. "Stand tall, Mia. Never let them make you feel small." So she did. She drew in a slow breath, squared her shoulders, and moved to the side of the grand hall. She folded her hands together gently, standing near the wall where shadows offered her some safety. There, she watched. The couples spinning across the dance floor, the way laughter rose and fell like waves, the glittering sparkle of champagne glasses raised in toasts. But she could not shake the feeling of being out of place, like a quiet note in a song too loud for her to join. What Mia didn't realize, as she tried to blend into the corner, was that her very presence had already disrupted the room, not because of her dress, not because of her background, but because one man, one powerful man, had seen her. Jackson Jorden, standing across the ballroom with a glass of wine in his hand, had noticed her the moment she entered. While others stared with judgment, his gaze held something entirely different. To him, she wasn't out of place. She wasn't less. To him, she was the only person in the room who seemed real. And though Mia didn't yet know it, her quiet attempt to disappear would soon draw her into the brightest light of all. Jackson Jorden was a man who knew how to command a room. At 35, he had built an empire with his mind, his discipline, and his relentless determination. Tonight, as always, people swarmed to him. Politicians extended eager hands. Businessmen leaned closer with forced laughs. Women in glittering gowns angled themselves into his path. He returned every greeting with the same measured smile. He was polite, charming, effortless. On the surface, he fit perfectly into the shimmering world of the Gala. But beneath the surface, he was tired, weary of the same conversations that circled endlessly around money and power, weary of eyes that only ever measured his worth in what he could give, not who he was. He swirled the wine in his glass, letting his gaze drift over the ballroom. To him, it was all a stage, every laugh rehearsed, every compliment sharpened like a blade. And then he saw her, Mia. She stood near the wall, hands folded gently, her posture quiet but strong. Unlike the others, she wasn't fighting to be seen. She wasn't stretching her smile or raising her voice. She was simply there. But the way she stood with dignity despite her simplicity caught his eye like a spark in darkness. Jackson felt his chest tighten, a strange sensation for a man who prided himself on control. His world had always been predictable. Deals, contracts, decisions. But this girl with a simple dress and honest eyes made something inside him stir. She didn't belong in this ballroom, that much was clear, yet somehow she seemed more radiant than anyone else present. For the first time that night, his smile was real, soft, almost unguarded. He studied her carefully. She wasn't speaking to anyone, wasn't seeking the center of attention, and yet she shone. Her innocence was a rare jewel in a room full of polished masks. Jackson set down his glass on a passing tray, his decision made without a second thought. He did not hesitate. He did not weigh consequences. He simply knew he had to go to her. The crowd parted slightly as he stepped forward. Conversations paused for a heartbeat, some eyes following him in surprise. The great Jackson Jorden rarely sought out anyone on his own. People came to him. But tonight, he crossed the ballroom floor with quiet determination, his eyes never leaving hers. Mia felt the air shift before she even looked up. A strange hush seemed to fall around her corner, and when she finally lifted her gaze, she froze. Jackson Jorden was walking straight toward her. Her breath caught in her throat. She couldn't look away. It was as though the entire room had melted into shadows, and only he remained. Tall, powerful, and impossibly magnetic. For Jackson, the world blurred in the opposite way. He didn't see the chandeliers or hear the violins anymore. He didn't notice the whispers rising behind him. All he saw was her. And as he closed the final distance between them, a thought burned in his mind with absolute certainty. This girl is different. This girl matters. Mia's breath caught as the man everyone admired, the man her father served with loyalty every single day, stopped in front of her. She had seen Jackson Jorden from a distance before, through the car window, through passing hallways, but never like this. Never so close that she could see the sharp lines of his jaw, the calm strength in his eyes. Her heart hammered painfully in her chest. Why would he approach her? Why would he notice her when women wrapped in diamonds and satin hovered only steps away? The air between them grew heavy with silence, and then his hand extended toward her, strong, steady, certain. Care for a dance? His voice was deep but gentle, carrying a note that disarmed her fears. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her chest tightened, her thoughts spiraling. He doesn't know. He doesn't know I'm only the driver's daughter. If he finds out, will he turn away? Will he regret this moment? Yet when her eyes lifted to his, all doubts faltered. His gaze held no trace of mockery or suspicion. No calculation. Only sincerity, as though she were the only person in this vast ballroom worth asking. Her hand trembled as she reached forward. Slowly, cautiously, she placed her fingers in his. His palm was warm, steadying, as though it had been waiting for hers all along. The music swelled, violins rising in a soft crescendo, as Jackson led her away from the shadows of the wall and into the dazzling center of the ballroom. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads turned sharply. Whispers buzzed in corners like bees disturbed from their hive. The great Jackson Jorden, choosing a girl no one recognized, a girl with no jewels, no title, no pedigree. But Jackson didn't care. He didn't even hear them. His world, in that moment, had narrowed into something beautifully simple. Mia. He placed his other hand gently at her waist, the contact sending a shiver through her body. Her free hand hovered uncertainly before resting lightly on his shoulder, the closeness making her cheeks burn. For a second, Mia thought her knees might give way, but then he moved, leading her into the rhythm of the waltz. His steps were confident, graceful, guiding her through the sea of stairs as though the entire night had been choreographed just for them. "You're doing fine," Jackson murmured softly, close enough that only she could hear. Her breath hitched. She dared a glance at him and saw no mockery in his eyes, only encouragement. Slowly, her stiff movements softened. Her fear melted into something else, something like wonder, like warmth spreading through her chest. Around them, the chandeliers glittered, and the polished floor reflected their every turn. To the onlookers, the sight was shocking, even scandalous. But to Jackson and Mia, it felt like stepping into a dream. As he twirled her gently, her laughter slipped free, surprising even herself. His lips curved at the sound, the faintest smile touching his face. At that moment, it was no longer a dance. It was a promise, silent and fragile but real. For Mia, it was the first time she felt seen, not as the driver's daughter, not as someone who didn't belong, but simply as herself. For Jackson, it was the first time in years that the weight of power and wealth fell away, leaving only the pure joy of connection. And though the crowd whispered and gossiped, the two of them moved as if they were the only souls in the world. The final note of the waltz lingered in the air like a sigh, and the ballroom erupted into applause. But Mia barely heard it. Her chest was still racing, her cheeks flushed, her hand trembling within Jackson's. As she began to step back, thinking he would let her return to the shadows, she felt the gentle but firm hold of his hand. He didn't release her. "Come with me," he said softly, his eyes holding hers. Before she could protest, he led her across the marble floor, through the tall glass doors and into the garden beyond. The night air greeted them with coolness, a relief from the heat of 100 stairs inside. The garden was breathtaking. Strings of fairy lights twinkled among the trees, their glow mingling with the silver light of the moon. Roses bloomed in neat rows, their fragrance sweet and calming. The world inside the ballroom faded into nothing more than a distant murmur. Here it was quiet. Here it was just the two of them. Mia's steps slowed. Her throat tightened, the weight of her secret pressed down harder than ever. She couldn't carry it anymore, not when he was looking at her like that, like she mattered. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "I need to tell you something." Jackson turned fully to her, his face unreadable but his attention absolute. She swallowed hard, clutching the fabric of her dress. "I'm not one of them. I don't belong here. My father, he's your driver. I begged him to bring me tonight. I begged him to ask you." The words tumbled out, breaking the fragile magic she had been wrapped in. She lowered her eyes, ashamed, waiting for the shift, for the smile to fade, for disappointment to settle in his gaze. But when she dared to lift her eyes again, what she found made her breath falter. Jackson wasn't shocked. He wasn't cold. His expression had softened, his eyes warm with something she couldn't name. Admiration, respect, relief. "Mia," he said gently, stepping closer. His voice was low, steady, yet carried a weight that shook her heart. "Do you know why I noticed you?" She blinked, confused. "Because you're real," he continued. "Everyone in that room wears masks. They laugh too loudly, smile too brightly, and hide behind wealth and power. But you're yourself. Honest, unafraid to admit who you are. That's what drew me to you." Her lips parted, but no words came. The knot in her chest unraveled, replaced by something warm that spread through her entire being. "Mia," he whispered, his gaze never leaving hers. "That is exactly what I've been searching for." Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. They shimmered in the fairy light, falling slowly down her cheeks, not from shame this time, but from a joy so raw it left her trembling. Jackson reached up, his fingers brushing one tear away with the gentlest touch, as though her tears were more precious than diamonds. Her heart ached, but in the most beautiful way. For the first time in her life, she wasn't invisible. She wasn't out of place. She was seen. She was valued. And in the quiet garden under the stars, she realized that her father's warning had been wrong. This world wasn't just for them, because in this moment, Jackson Jorden had made it theirs. Weeks later, the whispers had not stopped. In fact, they grew louder. "Isn't she the driver's daughter?" people muttered as Mia walked into the grand estate at Jackson's side. "She doesn't belong in his world. She'll embarrass him." But Jackson didn't waver. He held her hand firmly, like he was declaring to the world, "She's mine." Mia felt the weight of every stare, every judgmental eye, but when she looked up at Jackson, she found courage. His steady gaze told her that nothing else mattered. Once, she had stood shyly at the edge of the ballroom, unsure if she deserved to be seen. Now, she was walking with confidence, her chin lifted, her spirit unbroken. Jackson's business partners, the so-called elite, tried to question him in private. "Jackson, are you sure about this?" one asked carefully. "She has no family name, no wealth. People will talk." Jackson's voice was calm but sharp, like steel wrapped in velvet. "Let them talk. For the first time in my life, I'm with someone who wants me, not my money, not my status. That's worth more than all the gold in that ballroom." Mia overheard those words once, and tears filled her eyes. She had never been defended like that before. For years, she had been told she was just the driver's daughter. But to Jackson, she was enough. Even her father struggled to believe it at first. "Mia," he whispered one evening, his rough hands trembling. "I never thought a man like him would even notice you. But the way he looks at you, child, I think he really loves you." She hugged her father, her heart swelling. "Papa, he doesn't care where I come from. He cares about who I am." Nights under the stars became their refuge. Jackson and Mia often escaped the noise of society, finding peace in each other's company. He would hold her close and say, "Mia, you showed me something money could never buy, truth. With you, I don't need masks." She would smile, whispering back, "And you showed me something I thought I'd never have, acceptance." Bit by bit, the world began to change around them. Some of Jackson's closest friends, seeing his happiness, admitted quietly, "Maybe we were wrong. Maybe love really doesn't care about status." It wasn't easy, but together they stood against prejudice, showing society that kindness and dignity matter more than money and power. Mia had once been invisible. Now, she was a symbol. A symbol that love is not measured in wealth. A symbol that courage can silence judgment. A symbol that hearts, when true, shine brighter than gold. And as she walked hand in hand with Jackson Jorden, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Love had chosen her. Lesson: true love doesn't care about background, money, or power. It only cares about the heart.